Elena Morris rubbed her tired eyes as she hurried through the airport terminal. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she checked her watch for the 10th time. Late again, the story of her life lately. 12 hours at Memorial Hospital, monitoring ICU patients who teetered between life and death, had left her running on fumes and desperation. She'd barely made it home to shower and grab her pre-packed backpack before racing back out the door. Gate 23B. The numbers blurred on her phone screen as exhaustion played tricks with her vision. Her first real vacation in 3 years, and she was already fumbling it. Since her parents died in that car accident 2 years ago, Elena's life had contracted into an endless loop of work, bills, and keeping her younger brother Tommy afloat. At 26, she felt 46, bone-deep tired in a way that sleep never quite fixed. This weekend in Atlantic City with her nursing school friend Megan was supposed to change that. 2 days of no responsibilities, no overtime shifts, no lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering how to pay Tommy's college application fees. Just her and Megan, cheap cocktails, and maybe a few hands of blackjack if she felt reckless. Her phone buzzed. Megan's text glowed accusingly. "Where are you? They're boarding now." "Almost there," Elena typed back, though she had no idea where there actually was anymore. The terminal stretched endlessly before her, gates and signs swimming together in her sleep-deprived haze. 2 hours of sleep wasn't enough for anyone, but it was what she had. She turned a corner and spotted a small cluster of people near a doorway. Relief flooded through her. That had to be it. She picked up her pace, ignoring the protest from her aching feet. The sign above the entrance read, "Private Aviation Terminal," in discreet gold letters. Something about that didn't seem right, but her exhausted brain couldn't quite process why. She was too tired to think clearly, too focused on just making it onto the plane before it left without her. A woman in a crisp black uniform smiled as Elena approached. Professional, polished, nothing like the harried gate agents Elena was used to seeing. "Miss Jenkins," the woman said warmly, "we've been expecting you." Elena opened her mouth to correct her, but another uniformed staff member appeared at her elbow. "We're ready for boarding now. Mr. DeLuca is already on board." "Mr. DeLuca?" Elena blinked in confusion. "Who?" But she was already being gently guided down a carpeted walkway toward an aircraft that looked nothing like the commercial planes she was familiar with. This was smaller, sleeker, with none of the battered, overused quality of budget airlines. "Wait," Elena finally managed, her tired brain catching up. "I think there's been a mistake." "Don't worry about a thing," the flight attendant said smoothly, already taking Elena's backpack from her shoulder. "Mr. DeLuca mentioned you might be running late. He's very understanding." The interior of the jet stopped Elena in her tracks. Cream leather seats that looked like they belonged in a luxury car. Dark wood paneling with an old-world quality. A bar area stocked with crystal decanters. This was definitely not her budget flight to Atlantic City. A man sat with his back to her, silhouetted against the window. As the door closed behind Elena with a pressurized hiss, he turned. Elena's exhausted mind registered several things at once. He was younger than she'd expected, somewhere in his mid-30s. He wore a dark suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which it probably had. And he was striking in a way that made her suddenly, painfully aware of her faded jeans and wrinkled t-shirt that still smelled faintly of hospital disinfectant. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark, intense, assessing. Eyes that had seen things, hard things. The kind of eyes that belonged to men who made difficult decisions and lived with the consequences. Those eyes widened slightly as they landed on her, then narrowed with what might have been curiosity or suspicion. Elena couldn't tell which. "You're not Vanessa Jenkins." It wasn't a question. His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest trace of a Brooklyn accent underneath the polish. "No," Elena replied, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I'm Elena Morris, and I think I just got on the wrong plane." Something shifted in the man's expression. Not quite a smile, but a slight softening around his eyes. It would seem so. The engines hummed to life beneath them. Elena felt panic rising in her chest like floodwater. "I need to get off. I'm supposed to be on a flight to Atlantic City. My friend is waiting." "We're already cleared for takeoff," he said, gesturing toward the window where ground crew members were already moving away from the aircraft. He studied her for a moment longer, then added, Adrian DeLuca. Elena sank into the seat across from him, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Where is this plane going? Paris. Paris? Her voice climbed an octave. As in Paris, France? Adrian nodded, still watching her with that unsettling intensity. You really did get on the wrong plane. I don't even have a passport, Elena said, then immediately remembered she actually did. It was buried in her backpack, virtually unused since that one college trip to Canada 5 years ago that felt like a lifetime ago now. The staff thought you were my companion for the trip, Adrian explained, choosing his words with visible care. Vanessa Jenkins was supposed to join me this weekend. It seems she's been replaced. The full reality crashed over Elena like a wave. She was on a private jet to Paris with a complete stranger who thought she was someone else, and the plane was already moving, gathering speed as it taxied toward the runway. This can't be happening, she whispered, running her hands through her messy brown hair. I need to call Megan. I need to figure out how to get back. I need to breathe, Adrian finished for her. His voice was surprisingly gentle, though it still carried that undercurrent of command that suggested he was a man accustomed to being obeyed. He handed her a glass of water that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Drink. Elena took the water with shaking hands. Mr. DeLuca. Adrian. Adrian, Sham, she corrected, trying to steady her own voice. I can't go to Paris. I have a shift Monday. I have my brother to take care of. I have responsibilities. Something flickered across Adrian's face at the word responsibilities. He leaned back in his seat, studying her with renewed interest. What do you do, Elena Morris? I'm a nurse, Memorial Hospital, intensive care unit. Adrian nodded slowly, as if filing that information away. And this brother you mentioned? Tommy, he's 18. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Why was she telling this stranger her life story? Our parents died 2 years ago. I'm all he has. The plane was accelerating now, racing down the runway. Through the window, the world blurred into streaks of light and motion. I understand responsibility, Adrian said quietly. His voice had taken on a somber tone, weighted with something Elena couldn't quite identify. More than most. Then the plane lifted into the air, and Elena's stomach dropped. She was going to Paris, actually going to Paris, with a man she'd known for all of 5 minutes. As the plane leveled off and the city fell away beneath them, Adrian spoke again. Look, we're going to Paris whether we like it or not at this point. Once we land, I'll arrange for you to be on the first flight back. You have my word. You can do that? Elena asked, surprised by the offer. Of course, he paused, then added with a hint of that earlier almost smile, though I'm curious how you managed to get through private aviation security and onto my plane. Elena felt heat rush to her cheeks. I was so tired. I just finished a night shift and I've barely slept. I saw people gathered near a gate and just followed them. And nobody stopped you? Nobody asked for identification? Someone called me Miss Jenkins. I tried to correct them, but everything happened so fast. Elena shook her head, feeling foolish. I wasn't thinking clearly. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Well, Miss Morris, it seems you have accidentally infiltrated a security system that cost a considerable amount to maintain. For the first time since boarding, Elena laughed. It was a small, tired sound, but it broke some of the tension coiled in her chest. A flight attendant appeared with a tray of food that looked fancier than anything Elena had eaten in months. Small sandwiches on artisan bread, fresh fruit arranged like art, delicate pastries that probably had French names she couldn't pronounce. Adrian gestured for her to help herself. As she cautiously took a sandwich, he asked, Tell me about being a nurse. Elena wasn't sure why she started talking. Maybe it was the exhaustion lowering her defenses. Maybe it was the surreal quality of the situation. Or maybe it was the way Adrian listened, really listened, with a focus that made her feel like her words actually mattered to someone. She told him about the long shifts, the patients she'd helped save, and the ones she'd held hands with as they slipped away. She told him about struggling to keep up with the mortgage her parents had left behind while saving for Tommy's college, about the endless cycle of work and worry that had become her entire existence. In turn, Adrian shared fragments of himself, carefully chosen pieces that revealed little but suggested much. He handled security contracts for private clients. He traveled when business required it. He'd lost someone close recently, his business partner and closest friend, though he didn't elaborate on the circumstances. Is that why you're going to Paris? Elena asked. To get away? Adrian looked at her sharply, as if surprised by her insight. Perhaps, though I'm not sure anywhere is far enough. Hours passed. The sky outside darkened, then lightened again as they chased the sun east. Elena felt herself drifting, fighting to keep her eyes open. She was worried about what might happen if she let her guard down completely on this stranger's plane. You should rest, Adrian said, noticing her struggle. We still have several hours before we land. I can't just fall asleep on a stranger's private jet, Elena protested weakly. I think we've moved past being strangers. His voice held a note of dry amusement. Besides, you have my word, you're safe here. There was something in the way he said it, a quiet certainty that made Elena believe him. Against all logic and common sense, she trusted this man she'd just met. Just a short nap, she conceded, her eyelids already too heavy to keep open. As she drifted off, wrapped in a blanket that had appeared from somewhere, Elena had the strange thought that maybe, just maybe, getting on the wrong plane wasn't the worst mistake she'd ever made. When Elena woke, the world outside the window had transformed into something from a dream. Clouds stretched beneath them like a sea of cotton, tinged pink and gold by a sun that hung low on the horizon. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then it all came rushing back. She straightened in her seat, embarrassed to find herself covered with a soft blanket. Adrian sat across from her, working on a sleek laptop. The glow from the screen cast shadows across his face, emphasizing the strong line of his jaw and the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once. Welcome back, he said without looking up. You've been asleep for almost 6 hours. 6 hours? Elena couldn't remember the last time she'd slept that long uninterrupted. Probably not since before her parents died, when sleep wasn't a luxury stolen between shifts and responsibilities. You needed it. Adrian finally closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. We'll be landing in about an hour. Reality crashed down on Elena again. I need to call my brother and Megan. They must be worried sick. Adrian handed her a phone. International service. Take all the time you need. Elena dialed Tommy's number first, relief flooding through her when he answered immediately. Elena, where are you? Megan called hours ago looking for you. Tommy, you're not going to believe this. Elena glanced at Adrian, who had diplomatically moved to give her some privacy. I got on the wrong plane. The wrong plane? What does that even mean? It means I'm currently somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, on my way to Paris. The silence on the other end lasted so long, Elena thought they'd been disconnected. Tommy, are you there? You're going to Paris? My sister, who hasn't taken a day off in 2 years, is going to Paris? Almost to Paris, Elena corrected. It was an accident. I'm coming right back. An accident? How do you accidentally go to Paris? Elena sighed. It's complicated. I'll explain everything when I get back. Are you okay until then? Is Aunt Carol treating you all right? Elena, I'm 18, not 8. I'm fine. There was a pause. But you're really in Paris? That's actually kind of cool. It's not cool, Tommy. It's a disaster. Who are you with? Her brother's tone shifted, suddenly suspicious in that protective way that reminded Elena he wasn't a kid anymore. Elena lowered her voice. The owner of the plane. His name is Adrian DeLuca. Wait, Tommy's voice got weird. Adrian DeLuca? I think I've heard that name. Isn't he? Just a businessman, Elena cut him off quickly. Look, I have to go. I'll call you when I land, okay? After hanging up with Tommy, Elena called Megan. Her friend was far less understanding, cycling through panic, relief, and finally incredulous laughter at the sheer absurdity of the situation. Only you, Elena, Megan said. Only you could work a double shift and then accidentally end up on a private jet to Paris. When Elena finally handed the phone back to Adrian, she felt marginally calmer. At least everyone knew she was safe, if completely off course. Everything okay? Adrian asked. Yes, just a lot of explaining to do. Elena paused. My brother seemed to recognize your name. He started to ask if you were, no. She trailed off, unsure how to finish the question. I have business interests in several areas, Adrian said carefully. Security consulting primarily. Your brother might have seen something in the news. Before Elena could probe further, the plane began its descent. Below them, the lights of Paris emerged from the darkness like stars scattered across the earth. Countless pinpoints of light spreading in every direction, more beautiful than anything Elena had imagined. It's beautiful, she whispered, pressing her face against the window. It is, Adrian agreed. But when she turned, he wasn't looking at the city. He was looking at her. The private jet touched down smoothly at Charles de Gaulle. As they taxied toward the terminal, Elena felt her heart racing. She was in Paris, actually in Paris. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, people who worked double shifts and clipped coupons and worried about making rent. We'll be escorted through a private terminal, Adrian explained. No customs lines. Is that even legal? Elena asked nervously. Adrian's lips curved slightly. Perfectly. Just one of the advantages of private travel. A sleek black Mercedes waited for them on the tarmac. The driver, a thick-set man with graying hair and watchful eyes, greeted Adrian with familiar respect. Enzo, Adrian said by way of introduction, this is Elena Morris. She'll be staying at the hotel. Enzo's gaze flicked to Elena, assessing her in a way that made her feel like he was cataloging every detail. Then he nodded. Welcome, Miss Morris. As Enzo held the car door open, Adrian turned to Elena. Unless you'd prefer to go straight to the airport for a return flight. Elena hesitated. The sensible thing would be to turn around immediately, go home to Tommy and her job and her responsibilities. But the lights of Paris glowed in the distance, and something inside her rebelled at the thought of leaving without seeing anything of the city she'd dreamed about since childhood. Maybe I could stay just for the night. The words came out before she could stop them. My next shift isn't until Monday evening. Surprise flickered across Adrian's face, followed by something that looked almost like pleasure. The hotel has rooms available. You'd have your own space, of course. I couldn't let you pay. Elena, Adrian cut her off gently but firmly. You're here because of a mix-up that wasn't your fault. The least I can do is make sure you're comfortable before you go back. Too tired to argue and too tempted to refuse, Elena nodded. Thank you. The car glided through the nighttime streets of Paris. Elena found herself pressing against the window like a child, trying to take in everything at once. The Eiffel Tower sparkled in the distance. Elegant buildings lined wide boulevards. Even at this late hour, cafes glowed with warm light, and people strolled the sidewalks. It's even more beautiful than I imagined, she said softly. When was the last time you traveled? Adrian asked. A trip to Canada during nursing school. 6 years ago. I'm guessing you travel all the time, Elena said, turning to look at him. Too much. Adrian gazed out at the passing city. It lost its appeal a long time ago. That's sad, Elena said simply. Adrian looked at her thoughtfully. Maybe it is. The hotel was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. La Royale lived up to its name with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff who seemed to materialize out of thin air to assist them. Mr. DeLuca, welcome back, the manager greeted them. An older man with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades catering to the wealthy. We've prepared the executive suite as requested. Thank you, Jean-Paul. We'll also need a separate room for Miss Morris. Jean-Paul didn't even blink at the change in plans. Of course, sir. We have a lovely junior suite available on the same floor. Elena followed in a daze as they were escorted to an elevator with brass fixtures polished to a mirror shine. Her room turned out to be bigger than her entire apartment back home. It featured a balcony with a view of the Eiffel Tower and a bathroom with a tub she could practically swim in. Is everything satisfactory, Miss Morris? Jean-Paul asked. Elena could only nod, not trusting herself to speak. Mr. DeLuca has arranged for a selection of clothes to be delivered in the morning, Jean-Paul continued smoothly. If you need anything at all, simply dial 0. After they left, Elena sank onto the edge of the massive bed, completely overwhelmed. Less than 24 hours ago, she'd been rushing to catch a budget flight to Atlantic City. Now she was staying in a luxury hotel in Paris. It felt like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Breakfast at 9, hotel restaurant on the roof, incredible views. Elena hesitated before typing back. Okay, but I need to figure out a flight home tomorrow. His reply came quickly. We'll sort it out. Sleep well, Elena. Despite her exhaustion, Elena found it hard to fall asleep. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the situation too surreal. She kept expecting to wake up in her cramped bedroom in New Jersey, late for her shift as usual. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of flying over cities of light, with Adrian DeLuca's dark eyes watching her from across impossible distances. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through curtains Elena had forgotten to close. For a moment, she was completely disoriented. Then it all came rushing back. Paris, the private jet, Adrian. A glance at her phone showed it was already 8:30. She'd slept nearly 10 hours, something she hadn't done in years. Elena rushed to shower, wincing as she pulled on the same clothes from yesterday. As promised, at exactly 9 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. A hotel employee stood there with several garment bags and boxes. Compliments of Mr. DeLuca, the woman explained in accented English. He thought you might appreciate some fresh clothes. Before Elena could protest, the bags were laid across her bed and the woman had disappeared. Inside, Elena found several outfits, simple but clearly expensive. Jeans that felt like butter, blouses in soft fabrics, a dress that was elegant without being ostentatious, even shoes and underwear, all mysteriously in her size. The thought of Adrian selecting underwear for her made Elena's face burn, though she suspected he'd probably had someone else handle the actual shopping. Still, the attention to detail, the thoughtfulness of it, touched something in her chest. She chose a dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that felt like heaven against her skin. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn anything new that wasn't a hospital uniform or clearance rack basics. The rooftop restaurant took her breath away. Glass walls provided panoramic views of Paris in the morning light. The city spread out below like a living painting, all honey-colored stone and green parks, and that distant tower rising above it all. Adrian was already seated at a corner table, reading something on a tablet. He looked up as she approached, and for just a second, something shifted in his expression. Appreciation, maybe, or surprise. You look rested, he said, standing to pull out her chair, a gesture that seemed natural coming from him, not performative. Thank you for the clothes, Elena said. You really didn't have to. I wanted to. He said it simply, as if that settled the matter. Consider it an apology for the mix-up that brought you here. A waiter appeared with coffee and pastries that made Elena's mouth water. As they ate, Adrian explained that he'd managed to get her a seat on a flight back to New York the following evening. Tomorrow? Elena asked, surprised. Not today? All the direct flights were full, Adrian said, not quite meeting her eyes. Unless you'd prefer a connecting flight through London or Frankfurt. That would get you back tonight, but it's 12 hours with layovers. Elena should have insisted on leaving immediately. That would have been the responsible thing. But the thought of one full day in Paris was too tempting to resist. Tomorrow is fine, she heard herself say, feeling a mixture of guilt and excitement. I'll call Tommy and let him know. Good. Adrian looked genuinely pleased. Then I have a proposal. Elena raised an eyebrow, suddenly wary. Nothing improper, he added quickly, catching her expression. I thought perhaps I could show you Paris today. The real Paris, not just the tourist sites. Why would you do that? Elena asked, genuinely puzzled. You must have better things to do than play tour guide. Adrian set down his coffee cup, considering her question seriously. Because for the first time in a very long time, I'm curious about something. Someone, other than myself or my work. His honesty caught her off guard. I don't understand. You're different, Elena Morris. Adrian's dark eyes held hers. You didn't recognize me when we met. You don't seem impressed by the plane or the hotel or any of this. He gestured around them. Do you know how rare that is? I'm just a normal person, Elena said with a shrug. Exactly. Adrian smiled, and it transformed his face completely. Made him look younger, less guarded. So, what do you say, one day in Paris? Against her better judgment, Elena found herself smiling back. Okay, one day. They started at a small cafe tucked away on a side street where Adrian ordered for them in fluent French. The owner greeted him warmly, kissing him on both cheeks in that European way. and casting curious glances at Elena. "Do you come to Paris often?" Elena asked as they sipped espresso at a tiny table outside. The morning air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of fresh bread from somewhere nearby. "I lived here for a while after college," Adrian explained, "before I started my current business with—" He stopped abruptly, something dark crossing his face. "With your friend?" Elena prompted gently. "The one you mentioned on the plane?" Adrian nodded, his expression closing off slightly. "Marco. Marco Santini." The way he said the name with a mixture of pain and reverence told Elena this was dangerous territory. What was he like? For a moment, she thought Adrian wouldn't answer. Then quietly he said, "Brilliant, loyal, the best man I ever knew." "I'm sorry for your loss," Elena said, recognizing the grief in his voice. Adrian looked at her sharply. "I didn't say he died. You didn't have to." Working in the ICU had given Elena an intimate familiarity with loss. "It's in the way you talk about him." Adrian was silent for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "It was a year ago. There was a situation. Business that went wrong. I should have been there, but I wasn't." He took a deep breath. "Marco and I built everything together from nothing. We grew up in the same neighborhood, same schools. When I took over my father's business, Marco was the only one I trusted to stand beside me." "So you started traveling," Elena guessed. "After he died?" "Running," Adrian corrected, his smile bitter. "Not very brave, is it?" "Grief isn't about bravery," Elena said softly. "It's about survival." Adrian looked at her with new interest. "You sound like you know something about it." "My parents died 2 years ago, car accident done." The words still hurt, but the sharp pain had dulled to a persistent ache. "That's when I became responsible for Tommy." "How old was he?" 16, too young to lose both parents. Elena wrapped her hands around her cup, seeking its warmth. But then again, who isn't? They sat in silence for a moment, connected by shared experience in a way Elena hadn't expected. Two people who understood what it meant to keep going when part of you wanted to stop. "Come on," Adrian said finally, standing and offering his hand. "I want to show you something." He led her through winding streets to a small, hidden garden behind an ancient church. Spring flowers bloomed in wild profusion, and a stone bench sat beneath a flowering cherry tree. "I used to come here to think when I lived in Paris," Adrian explained. "Very few tourists know about it." They sat on the bench, watching pink petals drift down around them like snow. The city noise faded to a distant hum here, replaced by birdsong and the rustle of leaves. "It's peaceful," Elena said, feeling tension leave her shoulders that she hadn't even realized was there. "Marco and I used to talk about retiring in Paris," Adrian said, looking up at the branches above them. "We were going to buy a place in the countryside, grow old sitting in cafes, complaining about young people in French." Elena smiled at the image. "That sounds nice." "It was never going to happen." Adrian shook his head. "We were both too tied up in the business. Always one more deal, one more situation to handle. Always thinking there would be more time later. Now I'd give anything to have that time back." Elena understood that feeling intimately. How many times had she picked up extra shifts, missing Tommy's soccer games or school events, always thinking there would be other games, other events, until suddenly their parents were gone and time became something precious and finite. "We can't change the past," she said gently. "Believe me, I've tried." Adrian looked at her with those intense dark eyes. "What would you change if you could?" "I'd have spent more time with my parents," Elena admitted, "especially those last few years. I was so busy with nursing school and then my career. I just assumed they'd always be there." "That's the trap," Adrian said quietly. "We're always looking forward, never at what's right in front of us." Their eyes met, and Elena felt something shift between them. A connection deeper than polite conversation between strangers. Something real and a little frightening in its intensity. The moment was broken by church bells ringing nearby. "Hungry?" Adrian asked, standing and offering his hand. This time, Elena took it without hesitation. They spent the afternoon wandering through parts of Paris that Elena suspected most tourists never saw. Local markets where vendors called out in rapid French. Hidden courtyards with fountains and flowers. Tiny bookshops crammed with leather-bound volumes. Art galleries tucked into historic buildings where the floors creaked with age. Adrian was different here, away from the private jets and luxury hotels. More relaxed, more open. He told her stories about his college days with Marco, about their early struggles trying to establish themselves, about finally making it, though he was vague about the specifics of what exactly they'd made. In turn, Elena shared stories about growing up in a small New Jersey town, about her decision to become a nurse after her grandmother's illness, about Tommy's dreams of becoming a doctor. "He's smart enough," she said proudly as they walked along the Seine in the late afternoon light. "He got accepted to several good pre-med programs. I'm just worried about the PID." "Scholarships?" Adrian asked. "Some, but not enough." Elena sighed. "I've been taking extra shifts to help with tuition, but..." She trailed off, not wanting to dampen the day with financial worries. Adrian frowned slightly, but didn't press the issue. As the sun began to set, they found themselves at a small restaurant on a quiet street in Montmartre. The owner greeted Adrian warmly, clasping his hand in both of his and speaking rapid French. Adrian responded in kind, gesturing to Elena with what seemed like an introduction. The owner, a rotund man with a magnificent mustache, beamed at Elena and led them to a corner table with a candle and fresh flowers. "I hope you like authentic French cuisine," Adrian said as they settled in. "Marcel doesn't believe in menus. He just cooks what's fresh that day." "Sounds perfect," Elena said, meaning it. The food was incredible. Simple but perfectly prepared dishes that made Elena close her eyes in appreciation with every bite. Adrian ordered wine that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget, but she decided not to think about that. For one day, she was going to let herself enjoy this, enjoy him. "Why nursing?" Adrian asked as they lingered over dessert, a chocolate creation that melted on Elena's tongue. "What made you choose it?" "I like helping people," Elena said with a shrug, "and I'm good at staying calm in emergencies." "That's it? No dramatic story about a childhood illness or some TV show that inspired you?" Elena laughed. "Sorry to disappoint, not everything has to have a dramatic backstory." "In my experience," Adrian replied, "the most important choices usually do." Elena thought about it for a moment, twirling her wine glass. "Well, there was my grandmother. She got sick when I was in high school. Cancer. The nurses who took care of her were amazing. They made a terrible situation bearable, not just for her, but for our whole family." She paused, remembering. "One night when Grandma was in a lot of pain, this nurse named Sarah sat with us for hours after her shift ended. She didn't have to do that, but she did. I wanted to be that person for someone else." Adrian was watching her with a warmth in his eyes that made Elena's heart beat a little faster. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You're remarkable, Elena Morris," he said softly. "You know that?" Elena felt her cheeks flush. "I'm really not. I'm just doing my best with what I've got." "Which is exactly what makes you remarkable." Adrian reached across the table, touching her hand lightly. "Most people in your position would be bitter, looking for an escape, but you just keep going, taking care of everyone around you." "I don't have a choice," Elena said, though she didn't pull her hand away. "We always have choices," Adrian replied. "You've chosen to be strong when it would be easier not to be." The way he was looking at her made Elena feel both seen and exposed. This man, this complicated, secretive man, seemed to understand her better after one day than people she'd known for years. As they walked back to the hotel under a sky full of stars, Elena found herself wishing tomorrow would never come, that she could stay in this bubble where real life and all its problems seemed very far away. But reality was waiting. Tomorrow she'd be back on a plane, heading home to hospital shifts and bills and taking care of Tommy. This magical day would become just a strange story to tell, a memory that would seem less real with each passing year. Back at the hotel, Adrian walked her to her room. At the door, Elena turned to face him. "Thank you for today," she said, suddenly shy. "It was perfect." "The pleasure was mine," Adrian replied, his voice low. He hesitated, then added, "Would you have dinner with me again tomorrow, before your flight? There's another place I'd like to show you." Elena knew she should say no. Spending more time with Adrian would only make it harder to leave, but the thought of one more evening in his company was too tempting. "I'd like that," she said softly. For a moment they stood there, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Adrian leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. "Good night, Elena," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "Good night, Adrian." As she closed the door behind her, Elena leaned against it, her heart pounding. What was she doing? Getting involved with someone like Adrian DeLuca could only lead to heartbreak. They lived in completely different worlds. And yet, as she got ready for bed, Elena couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Not just surviving, but living. That night, she dreamed of Paris streets and Adrian's dark eyes and possibilities she'd never dared imagine before. Elena woke to sunlight and the distant sounds of Paris traffic. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the softness of the sheets and the lingering dream of walking along the Seine with Adrian. Her phone buzzed, a text from Tommy. "How's Paris with your mysterious businessman?" "Send pics." Elena smiled, typing back. "He's not my anything, and I'll be home tomorrow." Another buzz. "Looked him up online, Adrian DeLuca. There are some interesting articles about his security business. Be careful, sis." Elena frowned, sitting up in bed. She grabbed her phone and typed Adrian DeLuca into the search bar. Several results appeared, articles about his legitimate security consulting firm. But there were other articles too, speculation pieces, rumors, nothing concrete but enough to paint a picture of someone who operated in gray areas. Someone with connections to people who lived outside the law. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. She'd been so caught up in the romance of it all that she hadn't stopped to question who Adrian really was, what he really did. The expensive clothes, the private security, the way people reacted to him with a mixture of respect and something that looked an awful lot like fear. A knock at the door made her jump. Heart racing, she peered through the peephole to see a hotel staff member with a breakfast cart. "Breakfast, Miss Morris," the young woman announced cheerfully. "Compliments of Mr. DeLuca." Before Elena could protest, the woman wheeled in a cart laden with fresh pastries, fruit, coffee, and a single red rose in a small vase. "Mr. DeLuca has a business meeting this morning," the woman said, handing Elena a small envelope. "But he hopes you'll join him for lunch at noon in the lobby." After she left, Elena opened the envelope with shaking hands. "Elena, business calls, unfortunately. Feel free to explore the hotel or rest this morning. The concierge can arrange anything you need. Looking forward to lunch and showing you more of Paris before your flight tonight. Adrian." Elena set the note down, her emotions a complicated tangle. Part of her wanted to pack her bags and demand to be taken to the airport immediately. But another part, Siamad, a part she wasn't particularly proud of, wanted to see him again, to hear his explanation, to understand who he really was. She ate the breakfast mechanically, then showered and dressed in another of the outfits that had been delivered. A simple sundress in pale blue. Instead of waiting in her room, Elena decided to explore the hotel. She declined the concierge's offers of spa treatments or shopping excursions, preferring to wander the elegant public spaces on her own. In a quiet corner of the hotel's library, she found herself staring out at the Paris skyline, trying to make sense of the last 2 days. How had she gone from her normal, struggling life to being in Paris with a man who might be involved in things she didn't want to think about too closely? Penny for your thoughts. Elena turned to find Adrian standing behind her, looking slightly less formal than yesterday in dark jeans and a charcoal button-down. But there was something in his bearing, in the way he carried himself, that she hadn't noticed before. Or maybe she'd been too tired, too swept up in it all to see clearly. "I think they're worth more than that," Elena replied, a hint of challenge in her voice. "My brother did some research on you." Adrian's expression shifted. Not quite guilt, but close. "Ah, what did he find?" "Enough to make me wonder who you really are," Elena said, crossing her arms. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or was watching the clueless nurse fumble through your world too entertaining?" "Elena, no." Adrian stepped closer, and despite everything, Elena had to fight the urge to back away. Not from fear, but from the intensity of his presence. "It wasn't like that at all." "Then what was it like?" Elena challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, you haven't been entirely honest with me." Australian ran a hand through his dark hair. "You're right. Can we sit, please?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. They sat on a plush sofa in the corner, and Elena was careful to keep distance between them. When you first walked onto that plane, Adrian began, you clearly had no idea who I was, which almost never happens anymore. And then you told me about your real life with real problems, and he paused, searching for words. I wanted to stay in that space, where I was just a person to you, not a reputation or a set of assumptions. So you lied to me. I didn't lie, Adrian countered. I just didn't volunteer information that would have changed how you saw me. That's splitting hairs, Adrian. Maybe. He looked at her directly. But can you honestly tell me you would have been as open with me yesterday if you'd known everything? Elena wanted to say yes, but she knew it wasn't true. She would have been guarded, suspicious, probably terrified. That's not the point. The point is that I deserve the chance to make that choice for myself. You're right. Adrian's shoulders slumped slightly. I'm sorry, Elena, truly. His apology seemed genuine, and despite her anger, Elena found herself softening. Why did you do it? Really? Adrian was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city. For the past year, since Marco died, people treat me differently. Like I'm dangerous. Or like I'm a meal ticket. Business associates are afraid of me. Women approach me with calculations in their eyes. He turned back to Elena. And then there was you. Exhausted, annoyed, completely unimpressed by me or my plane or any of it. It was refreshing. So I was a novelty, Elena said flatly. No. Adrian shook his head firmly. You were real. You are real. In a way that almost nothing in my life has been since Marco died. Yesterday, showing you Paris, talking to you, it was the first time in a year that I didn't feel like I was just going through the motions. There was such raw honesty in his voice that Elena found it hard to maintain her anger. You should have told me. I know, Adrian nodded, and I was going to. Tonight at dinner, I just wanted one more day of being just Adrian to you. Not everything else that comes with my name. Elena studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, but found only genuine regret and something else. A vulnerability that seemed at odds with everything she'd read about him this morning. I don't know what to say, she finally admitted. Say you'll still have lunch with me, Adrian suggested, hope evident in his voice. And dinner before your flight. Let me make it up to you. Elena knew the sensible thing would be to walk away now, to protect herself from getting any more entangled with this complicated, possibly dangerous man. But the thought of spending her last day in Paris alone seemed unbearably sad. Okay, she agreed cautiously. Lunch. But I want you to be honest with me from now on. No more convenient omissions. Deal. Adrian's relief was palpable. Complete honesty from here on out. Lunch was at a small bistro overlooking the Seine, far from the luxury hotel, as they ate simple but delicious French food. Adrian answered Elena's questions. He told her about growing up in Brooklyn, son of a man who'd built an empire through means that weren't always legal, about taking over that empire when his father died, about trying to legitimize as much of it as he could while maintaining the loyalty of people who'd known him since he was a boy. Marco and I grew up together, Adrian explained. Same neighborhood, same schools. When my father died and I inherited everything, Marco was the only one I trusted completely. We spent years building legitimate businesses to replace the old operations. And Marco's death? Elena asked gently. Adrian's jaw tightened. There are still people who don't like the changes I've made. People who preferred the old ways. Marco was caught into the middle of a dispute. I should have been there, but I was handling something else. By the time I arrived, he stopped, unable to finish. I'm sorry, Elena said softly. They spent the afternoon walking along the Seine, talking with an ease that surprised Elena. Knowing the truth about Adrian, instead of making things more complicated, actually made it easier to connect with him. The invisible barrier his secret had created was gone. Can I ask you something personal? Adrian said as they paused on a bridge. After everything we've talked about today, I think that's allowed, Elena replied. Why haven't you moved on from that hospital? With your skills, you could work anywhere. Make more money. Elena leaned against the railing. It's complicated. After my parents died, I needed stability for Tommy. Changing bomb, maybe moving. It seemed like too much upheaval. And now? Now there's the financial reality, Elena admitted. I've been at Memorial long enough to have decent seniority, good shifts. Starting over somewhere else might mean more money eventually, but in the short term, it would be a risk. And I can't afford risks. Not with Tommy's tuition. Adrian nodded thoughtfully. You've sacrificed a lot for your brother. It's not a sacrifice when it's someone you love, Elena said simply. Still, Adrian persisted. Don't you ever think about what you want for yourself? Dreams you've put on hold? The question hit closer to home than Elena was comfortable with. Of course she had dreams. Travel, further education, maybe even a relationship someday with someone who understood her complicated life. But those things had seemed so far out of reach for so long that she'd stopped letting herself think about them. Sometimes, she admitted, but dreams don't pay bills. They could, Adrian said quietly, with the right support. Elena tensed immediately. I don't want your money, Adrian. I know you don't, he replied quickly. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Adrian seemed to struggle with his words. I meant that maybe there's a way for you to have both. Stability and dreams. Before Elena could respond, a street musician nearby began playing a hauntingly beautiful melody on a violin. The moment shifted, suspended in the notes of the music. As evening approached, they climbed the steps to Montmartre, to the highest point in Paris. The city spread out below them, beginning to twinkle with lights as the sky darkened to deep blue. Your flight leaves in 3 hours, Adrian said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. We should probably head back soon so you can get your things. Elena nodded, heaviness settling in her chest. These 2 days in Paris with Adrian had been like a beautiful dream, but reality was waiting back home. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. This has been more than I ever imagined. Elena. Adrian turned to face her, his expression serious. What if you didn't get on that plane tonight? She blinked. What? Stay, he said, the single word heavy with meaning. Stay in Paris with me. Adrian, I can't just... Why not? He stepped closer. Tommy's with your aunt. You're not on shift until Monday evening. That's 2 more days to figure this out. Whatever this is between us. Elena's heart raced. I don't know. I have a house just outside the city, Adrian continued. It's peaceful, private. We could go there, spend some real time together, away from everything. The offer was so tempting that Elena almost said yes immediately, but a warning voice in the back of her mind held her back. Adrian, we live in completely different worlds, she said gently. Whatever this is between us, it can't go anywhere real. Why not? He challenged. Because of what I do? Because I have money and you don't? Those are just circumstances, Elena. They don't have to define us. It's not that simple, Elena countered. Your life is private jets and luxury hotels and, she gestured helplessly, and things I don't even know about. Mine is hospital shifts and student loans and making ends meet. Those aren't just details, Adrian. They're realities. They're not the only realities, Adrian insisted, taking her hands. What about this? What we feel when we're together, isn't that real too? Elena pulled her hands away, afraid of how much she wanted to believe him. I have responsibilities I can't walk away from, not even for this. I'm not asking you to abandon them, Adrian said. I'm just asking for a little more time. Time to see if what I'm feeling is real. Time for what? Elena whispered. Time to see if what I'm feeling for you is real, Adrian answered honestly. Because it feels real, Elena. More real than anything has in a very long time. Elena's breath caught. I'm scared. Of what? Of letting myself believe in this, in you, in us. Elena took a shaky breath. What happens when I go back to real life and you realize that the struggling nurse from New Jersey doesn't fit into your world after all? That won't happen, Adrian said firmly. You can't know that. I know how I feel when I'm with you, Adrian said, moving closer. I know that for the first time since Marco died, I'm thinking about the future instead of just trying to escape the past. He reached up to touch her cheek gently. Stay, Elena. Not forever. Just 2 more days. See where this might lead. Elena closed her eyes, leaning slightly into his touch. Everything in her wanted to say yes, to grab this unexpected chance at something beautiful. What about Tommy? She asked, her practical nature asserting itself. Call him, Adrian suggested. Make sure he's okay for 2 more days. I can have you back by Monday afternoon. Plenty of time before your shift. It was reasonable. It addressed her main concern. What held her back now was just fear. Okay, she finally whispered. 2 more days. The smile that broke across Adrian's face was like sunrise. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were something precious. You won't regret it, he murmured against her hair. Elena wasn't sure if that was true, but as she stood there in his embrace, with Paris spread below them and stars appearing overhead, she knew one thing for certain. She would have regretted walking away. They made their way back down the hill, hand in hand. Elena called Tommy from the car, explaining her change of plans without going into detail about her feelings for Adrian. To her surprise, Tommy was entirely supportive. Are you kidding? Stay in Paris. Aunt Carol's fine, and I've got study group all weekend anyway. He paused. You deserve this, Elena. You've put your life on hold for me long enough. His words brought tears to her eyes. I love you, Tommy. Love you too, sis. Now go have an adventure. After hanging up, Elena looked over at Adrian, who was pretending not to listen. Tommy says I should stay. Smart kid, Adrian replied, his eyes warm. Must run in the family. Instead of going back to the hotel, Adrian directed Enzo to take them to his house in the French countryside. As they left the city behind, Elena felt excitement and nervousness fluttering in her stomach. The car turned down a tree-lined driveway. At the end stood a beautiful stone house that looked centuries old, though Elena could tell from the windows and other details that it had been extensively renovated. Home, Adrian said as they came to a stop. At least one of them. How many homes do you have? Elena asked. Adrian looked slightly embarrassed. A few. Apartment in New York, place in the Hamptons. This one. And the brownstone in Brooklyn, where I actually spend most of my time. Wow, Elena said, trying to imagine owning even one home. It's excessive, Adrian admitted. Marco used to give me a hard time about it. He kept the same apartment in Queens his whole life, even after we were successful. He sounds like he was a good friend, Elena said softly. The best. Adrian's expression was sad. He would have liked you, Elena, very much. A housekeeper greeted them at the door, an older woman with kind eyes who seemed unsurprised by their arrival. Madame Bertrand keeps the house ready for me, Adrian explained. She lives in the guest cottage with her husband, who manages the grounds. After a light dinner, Adrian showed Elena around. The house was beautiful, old-world charm mixed with modern comfort, but it was the library that captured Elena's heart. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, comfortable reading nooks, soft lighting. This is amazing, she said, running her fingers along the spines. I could spend days in here. You're welcome to, Adrian said, watching her with a fond expression. There's a guest room prepared for you upstairs. Blue door at the end of the hall. Elena's cheeks warmed at the implication that they would be sleeping separately. Of course they would. They'd known each other for all of 2 days, but something in the way Adrian said it made her wonder if he'd been considering other possibilities. Later, as she settled into the luxurious guest room with its canopy bed in view of the moonlit garden, Elena wondered what she'd gotten herself into. This felt like a fairy tale, but fairy tales weren't real, and reality had a way of reasserting itself. In 2 days, she'd be back in New Jersey, back to her real life. And what then? As she drifted off to sleep, Elena told herself not to get too attached, not to believe too much in this beautiful fantasy. But her heart, already falling for the complicated man down the hall, wasn't listening. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch forever. For a moment, she simply lay there, taking in the elegant surroundings, the antique furniture, the silk curtains, the sense that she'd stepped into someone else's life entirely. After a shower in the marble bathroom, Elena dressed in jeans and a simple blouse from the clothes Adrian had provided. She made her way downstairs, following the scent of coffee and fresh bread. She found Adrian in the kitchen, dressed casually in jeans and a dark sweater, talking to Madame Bertrand in French. He looked up when Elena entered, his entire face brightening. Good morning, he said. Sleep well? Better than I have in years, Elena admitted with a smile. I thought we could take it easy today, Adrian said, pulling out a chair for her at the kitchen table where breakfast was laid out. There's a farmer's market in the village if you'd like to explore, or we could just relax here. The gardens are beautiful. The casual way he spoke about their time together, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, made Elena's heart flutter dangerously. The market sounds nice, she said. I've never been to a real French farmer's market. Then that's what we'll do, Adrian said simply. The village was like something from a postcard, stone buildings with flower boxes, narrow cobbled streets, a central square where local farmers and artisans had set up their stalls. Adrian seemed to know everyone, greeting villagers by name and introducing Elena as his friend from America. The way he navigated this simpler world surprised her. You seem comfortable here, she observed as they browsed a stall selling local honey. More so than in most places, Adrian nodded thoughtfully. The people here, they don't care about my business or my reputation. They judge me by how I treat them. Nothing more. Is that why you have a house here? To escape? Partly, Adrian admitted, paying for a jar of honey, but also because it reminds me of summers when I was a kid, before things got complicated. My mother used to bring me and my sister to a place like this before she left. Elena felt herself softening further. Behind the dangerous reputation was a man with his own scars. They spent the morning wandering through the market, buying fresh bread, cheese, and fruit for a picnic. The villagers treated them like any other couple, with no hint that they recognized Adrian as anything other than a friendly American who owned a house nearby. After the market, Adrian drove them to a secluded spot by a river. Ancient willow trees provided shade from the midday sun. They spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked their purchases. This is perfect, Elena sighed, leaning back on her elbows and tilting her face toward the dappled sunlight. Yes, Adrian agreed. But when she glanced at him, he wasn't looking at the scenery. He was looking at her. You're staring, she pointed out, blushing. Sorry. He didn't look sorry at all. You look happy, relaxed. It suits you. I am happy, Elena admitted, happier than she'd been in a long time. They ate their simple feast, talking about everything and nothing. After lunch, they walked along the river hand in hand. Tell me something real, Adrian said suddenly, as they paused to watch ducks paddle past. Something you haven't told anyone else. Elena considered the request. Sometimes I resent Tommy, she admitted, the words difficult but necessary. Not him exactly, but the responsibility. I was 24 when our parents died. I had plans, dreams, a job offer at a research hospital in Boston. She sighed. I gave it all up without hesitation because Tommy needed me. And I don't regret it. Not really, but sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like. That doesn't make you a bad person, Adrian said, squeezing her hand. It makes you human. Your turn, Elena said. Tell me something real. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I blame myself for Marco's death, he finally said. There was a meeting, a negotiation with some people who didn't appreciate the changes I was making to my father's old business. Marco went in my place because I had other matters to handle. His jaw tightened. It was a setup, an ambush. If I had been there instead, or maybe you would have been killed too, Elena said gently. You can't know what would have happened. That's what everyone tells me, Adrian said with a sad smile. But knowing it logically doesn't change how I feel. Elena understood that intimately. She wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. Grief isn't logical, and neither is guilt. Adrian held her close, his heart beating steady under her ear. For a long moment, they simply stood there, two wounded people finding comfort in each other's understanding. That evening, they cooked dinner together in the spacious kitchen, a simple pasta dish with fresh ingredients from the market. Marco's mother taught us both to cook in college, Adrian explained as he chopped garlic with practiced ease. She said no son of hers, biological or honorary, was going to live on takeout. She sounds like a wise woman, Elena said. She was, Adrian agreed. She died about 5 years ago. Cancer. Marco took it hard. He was an only child, and after his father left when he was a kid, it was just the two of them. I'm sorry, Elena said softly. They settled in the library after dinner with glasses of wine, sitting close together on a comfortable sofa. A fire crackled in the fireplace, casting warm shadows. This doesn't feel real, Elena confessed. Being here with you like this. It is real, Adrian assured her, his arm draped across her shoulders. Maybe more real than anything else in my life right now. But tomorrow I go back to New Jersey, Elena reminded him. Back to hospital shifts and bills and real life. Adrian was quiet for a moment. What if there was a way to combine our worlds? Elena's heart skipped. What do you mean? I mean, Adrian set his glass down and turned to face her. Elena, I know we've only known each other for 3 days. I know this is fast and probably crazy, but there's something between us that I haven't felt in a very long time, maybe ever. And I don't want to lose it when you get on that plane tomorrow. I don't want to lose it either, Elena admitted. But I don't see how this works, Adrian. Your life is here and in New York and wherever your business takes you. Mine is in New Jersey with Tommy and my job. I can come to New Jersey, Adrian said as if it were obvious. I can work from anywhere, and you could visit me sometimes. Weekends, days off. The idea was tempting. So tempting, Elena was afraid to believe it could be real. Long-distance relationships are hard, she pointed out. Add in our differences, and I just don't know. What differences? Adrian challenged. So I have money and you don't. So what? That's circumstance, not character. It's not just the money, Elena tried to explain. It's the worlds we live in, the expectations, the realities of who you are and what you do. Tell me what you're really afraid of, Adrian said softly. Elena looked into his eyes, finding courage to be completely honest. I'm afraid that once the novelty wears off, once you've had your fill of the struggling nurse from New Jersey, you'll move on, and I'll be left picking up the pieces while you jet off to your next adventure. Adrian's expression softened. Elena, you're not a novelty to Moish. He paused, searching for words. You're like coming up for air after being underwater too long. You make me feel alive again, connected. Like maybe there's still something good worth fighting for. His words touched something deep inside her, a place that had been closed off since her parents died. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, Adrian confessed. I'm terrified of messing this up, of not being good enough for you, of dragging you into a world that might hurt you, but I'm more afraid of letting you go without even trying. He cupped her face gently. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance. For both of us. The tenderness in his touch, the sincerity in his voice, they were Elena's undoing. She leaned forward and kissed him. Adrian responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her as he deepened the kiss. It was gentle at first, then increasingly urgent, as if they were both trying to communicate everything they couldn't yet say in words. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? He asked. Elena smiled. It's a let's try. One day at a time. I'll take it, Adrian murmured before kissing her again. Later, at the threshold of her guest room, there was a moment of uncertainty. The attraction between them was undeniable, but Elena wasn't ready for more. Not when everything was still so new, so fragile. Good night, Adrian, she said softly, kissing his cheek. He seemed to understand without explanation. Good night, Elena. Sweet dreams. As she closed the door, Elena leaned against it, her heart full of conflicting emotions. Excitement, fear, hope, and something deeper that she wasn't quite ready to name. Their last day in France dawned bright and clear. They spent it exploring the countryside around Adrian's house, visiting a small chateau, having lunch at a centuries-old vineyard, walking through fields of wildflowers that stretched endlessly. It was perfect, made bittersweet by the knowledge that it would end with Elena on a plane back to New Jersey. As afternoon waned, they returned to the house to collect Elena's belongings. In her room, she found a small wrapped package with a note in Adrian's handwriting. Something to remember our time in Paris, A. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like the Eiffel Tower. Beautiful but not ostentatious. Exactly what she would have chosen. She put it on immediately, the pendant resting just above her heart. Downstairs, Adrian was waiting. His face brightened when he saw the necklace. You like it? It's perfect, Elena assured him. Thank you. The drive to the airport was quiet, As they approached the terminal, Adrian finally broke the silence. I've arranged for a private lounge where we can wait until boarding, unless you'd prefer the main terminal. Elena shook her head. The thought of saying goodbye in a crowded terminal was unbearable. The private lounge was elegant but understated. A staff member took Elena's boarding pass, promising to notify them when it was time to board. Once they were alone, Adrian pulled Elena into his arms, holding her as if trying to memorize the feel of her. I've arranged for a car to meet you at JFK, he said against her hair. It will take you straight home. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He pulled back to look into her eyes. When will I see you again? I have meetings in the city through Wednesday, Adrian said, but I could come to New Jersey Thursday evening. If that works for you. The fact that he would rearrange his schedule to see her so soon made Elena's heart swell. Thursday would be perfect. I'm off Friday. Then it's a date, Adrian said, smiling. Our first official date. What would you call the past 3 days? Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. The prologue, Adrian replied, kissing her lightly. The best prologue I've ever read. The announcement came too soon. As they walked toward the gate, Adrian kept an arm around her waist, reluctant to let go even for a moment. At security, the furthest point he could accompany her, they stopped. Call me when you land, Adrian said, his voice rough. I don't care what time. I want to know you're safe. I will, Elena promised, fighting tears. Elena. Adrian took her face in his hands. These past 3 days have been, I don't even have words. Life-changing, Elena suggested, managing a smile despite the tightness in her throat. Exactly. He pulled her close for one last kiss, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. This isn't goodbye. It's just, see you soon. See you soon, Elena echoed, forcing herself to step back, to turn away, to walk towards security and away from the most extraordinary 3 days of her life. As she handed her boarding pass to the security officer, Elena glanced back one last time. Adrian was still standing there, watching her with an expression that made her heart ache in the best possible way. The flight back felt surreal. As promised, a driver was waiting at JFK. The Blacktown car that took her through New York traffic and across the bridge to New Jersey was a stark contrast to the bus she normally would have taken. She called Adrian as soon as she was in the car. You landed safely, he answered immediately. Yes, the car is very nice, thank you. You're welcome. She could hear the smile in his voice. How was the flight? Lonely, Elena admitted. I kept turning to tell you something and remembering you weren't there. I know exactly what you mean, Adrian said softly. My house feels empty without you. They talked until the car pulled up outside Elena's modest apartment building. The contrast between Adrian's world and hers had never been more apparent. I'm home, she told him. I should go. Tommy's probably waiting up. Of course, call me tomorrow. I will. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Elena. Sweet dreams. Tommy was indeed waiting, eager to hear about her adventure. As she told him a carefully edited version, Elena found herself touching the Eiffel Tower pendant, a reminder that it hadn't all been a dream. Later, lying in her own familiar bed, Elena stared at the ceiling. How would she ever reconcile these two parts of her life? How could Adrian DeLuca, with his complicated business and dangerous world, fit into her life of hospital shifts and budget concerns? But as she drifted off, she found herself not worried, but hopeful. Because underneath all the external differences, she and Adrian had connected on a level that felt rare and precious. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. The next few days passed in a blur of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Elena went back to work, did laundry, helped Tommy with applications, paid bills. But through it all, there was a new lightness in her step. What happened on that trip? Her friend Megan asked during lunch break. You're different. Good different, or bad different? Elena asked, unable to suppress a smile. Good, Megan decided. Really good. Like you've woken up or something. That was exactly how it felt. Like Elena had been sleepwalking through her life and had suddenly opened her eyes. She and Adrian talked every day. Sometimes quick calls, sometimes hour-long conversations that left her smiling. He was in New York for meetings, but he sent her photos and asked about her days, creating a bridge between their separate lives. Thursday morning, Elena woke to a text. Can't wait to see you tonight. Flight lands at 6, dinner at 7:30? She texted back immediately. Can't wait either. 7:30 is perfect. That evening, Elena took extra care with her appearance. She settled on a simple blue dress and the silver necklace that hadn't left her neck. Tommy gave her a thumbs up. You look great, sis. He won't know what hit him. Please try not to call him that DeLuca guy to his face, Elena said. No promises, Tommy teased, then grew serious. He makes you happy, doesn't he? Elena nodded. He does. Then that's all that matters, Tommy said with wisdom beyond his years. You deserve to be happy. A knock at the door made Elena's heart leap. She opened it to find Adrian standing there, looking slightly less polished than usual in jeans and a casual shirt, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Hi, he said, his eyes taking her in with obvious appreciation. Hi yourself, Elena replied. You're early. I couldn't wait, Adrian admitted, handing her the flowers. These reminded me of our walk. They're beautiful. Come in. I want you to meet Tommy. As Elena watched Adrian and her brother shake hands, she was struck by how natural it felt. He didn't look out of place. He looked right. Nice place, Adrian said, glancing around the modest living room with its secondhand furniture and family photos. It's not much, Elena said, suddenly self-conscious. It's a home, Adrian corrected gently. A real home. You can feel it. The simple observation eased Elena's tension. This was who Adrian was beneath everything else. A man who understood what truly mattered. They went to a small Italian restaurant in Elena's neighborhood. Family-owned, with homemade pasta and an atmosphere warm and inviting. This is perfect, Adrian said as they settled into a corner booth. Exactly what I was hoping for. Over dinner, they talked about their days apart. Adrian told her about his meetings in New York, about the challenges of managing his various business interests. And you? He asked. How was your week? Elena told him about returning to work, about her patients, about the strange feeling of being back in her normal life after Paris. It was like I dreamed it all, she admitted, until I looked down and saw this. She touched the pendant. It was real, Zion, Adrian said, reaching across to take her hand. And this is real too. By the time they left the restaurant, walking hand in hand back to Elena's apartment, it felt like they'd been doing this for years. At her door, Adrian pulled her close. When can I see you again? I'm off tomorrow, Elena reminded him. And the weekend. Perfect, Adrian said. I've cleared my schedule. I thought maybe I could take you somewhere, anywhere you want. Elena smiled, an idea forming. Actually, there is somewhere I'd like to go, but it's not fancy. Name it, Adrian said immediately. The state park where my dad used to take us camping, Elena said. It's beautiful this time of year. We could rent a cabin, hike the trails, sit by the lake. Adrian looked surprised, then pleased. I haven't been camping since college. It sounds perfect. His enthusiasm for her simple suggestion touched Elena deeply. Then it settled. Our first real vacation together. The first of many, Adrian promised. As he walked away, turning back once to wave, Elena felt certainty wash over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because sometimes the wrong plane leads to exactly the right destination. At the top of the stairs, Elena whispered words she hadn't yet said aloud but felt with every fiber of her being. I love you, Adrian DeLuca. And somewhere across the city, in a hotel suite with a view of New Jersey, Adrian was making plans for a future he'd never imagined but now couldn't live without. A future with Elena Morris, the woman who had accidentally boarded his plane and permanently changed the course of his life.